The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
My name is Jasmine, and I am a recovering drug addict.
My name is Richie Farrell, aka the Old White Junkie.
And we are your hosts for Exit Team Nashua.
Our mission is to bring recovery into the living room.
Last year, over 72,000 Americans died of an accidental overdose.
That's almost 200 Americans every single day.
We will bring you guests with real-life experiences with addiction and recovery. Welcome to Exit Team Nashua. Hi, welcome to Exit Team Nashua. My name is Jasmine, and I am your host. As always, we are very excited to be here in studio. We're also really excited for handsome Tony to be on set tonight. We have no idea what we're going to talk about, and we apologize now in advance for anything that may come out of our mouth.
True.
So, Tony, you willingly volunteered to come on this show. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, good question. Because a year ago, probably even 6 months ago, I wouldn't have agreed to come on just because, and I can talk about it a little bit afterwards, I've been really protective of kind of my recovery in a public space, social media, and certainly like on television. But things have changed somewhat in the last 6 months. And yeah, so I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you're a person in recovery?
Yes, I'm in long-term recovery.
Okay, awesome. So you qualify for the show?
100%.
Okay, perfect. Because when you said you wanted to come out, I was like, let's do it. Let's have him on. Didn't even know if you qualified.
I do.
So you're a person in recovery. How long have you been in recovery for?
Yeah, I've been in long-term recovery really since 2012.
Wow.
The first time I went to treatment, but since January 2014. And I wish I could sit here and tell you all that I've had consistent sobriety, since 2014. That's not part of my story. I've had brief relapses on 2 occasions and gotten right back into it and really picked up where I left off. So
yeah, I really started my journey in recovery probably like 2011 when I was like court mandated to treatment, right? But I had to have every experience that I ever had to have to get me to a place where I could see. So I'm grateful for every like brief experience that I had like being in recovery. And I'm also incredibly grateful for where I'm at today, because you shared something like you've become more open over the last 6 months. And so have I, and when I for the first couple of years of this particular bout, because I've been in and out of recovery since 2011, but my sobriety date is November 3rd, 2016. And so I haven't found it necessary to pick up a drink or drug since then. Since
August 3rd, 2019.
2019. No, what was I talking about? See, before that. Oh, so when I first got sober, I was so rigid and everything was very black and white. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't do what I did, how I did, like you were doing something wrong. And so therefore I had a lot of personal pain my first couple of years of sobriety. And so now the freedom that I have is to like not judge anyone and to love them for where they're at. And like, I don't really care whatever you choose, bro. I just want to love on you. Mm-hmm. So I also have become very open-minded over the last 6 months.
Yeah, and part of that is just because really the new job that I have, I've been working in treatment since 2015 and recently took a job at Granite recovery centers and a really good culture of people in recovery that work there.
Yep.
And I hear people out talking about their own story, and that inspired me to kind of just be a little more open about it. Mm-hmm. I've been really protective historically. I never really disclosed when I worked in treatment previous to the last year since I started at Granite Recovery Centers, and I find that it's been really helpful. It's really humbling, and I think helps me connect in a different way with people that I work with in the community. So
yeah, I think so I have had the honor and privilege of working for a few different treatment centers. And so one thing that people always say to me is, well, you work in recovery. No, that's not true. Like working in treatment is not working in recovery. Like the way I work my recovery is very different than the way a treatment center operates, right? And so a treatment center operates, with what they have to do for each client individually, and the treatment modality that I chose for my own personal recovery is very different than all the different options that treatment offers. So there's that. And then why do I keep forgetting what I'm saying tonight?
That's all right.
Yeah,
but
there's something wrong with me. Too much pre-workout.
100% though. No, I agree. Treatment,
my damn
working in
phone keeps going off over here.
working in treatment is not recovery. I'm around people in recovery. But I think for me, the way I started in 2012 and then more seriously in 2014 was with 12-step recovery was what worked for me.
Yep.
I mean, I still have a sponsor who I talk to multiple times a week. He's coming over for Christmas Eve. We're hosting. And that's probably the most important relationship that I have. Yeah, in recovery. And so for me, that's where I think it has to be part of my long-term recovery if I'm going to sustain good long-term recovery. And treatment, it's good. It helps me to be around it every day, but it's not recovery. I've got to do my own thing.
Right, exactly. The second thing I was going to say, I just remembered, is I've had the honor and privilege of working for many different treatment centers and everywhere you go, everything, ebbs and flows and has its ups and downs. But one of the really cool things about Granite Recovery Centers is that you can be open about being a person in recovery, and then that has been my experience with them as well. And it has made me particularly useful as long as I don't make it about me and I make it about what I can do to help someone.
Yeah.
Which is also the purpose of this show. So tell me a little bit about life before you ever picked up a drink or a drug.
Yeah, I guess life before I ever picked up a drink or a drug. I mean, there wasn't much. I mean, the first
Tony was 14, like, I was 4.
Yeah, the first 14 years or so. I guess a lot of insecurity. I experienced a lot of success at the same time, like with sports, youth sports, and
what sports?
Baseball and hockey mostly.
Okay.
And we went to, the national championship for hockey in Quebec, Canada. The
How old
Pee
were
Wee
you?
National Championship. I was 14 years old.
14? Wow.
Went to the 13-year-old Babe Ruth World Series.
Holy.
Yeah, so really competed at like some of the highest levels and experienced a ton of success. Team sports, tons of fun, well supported by my family. Always had opportunities to go to great schools, but still dealt with a lot of insecurities. And then I think very busy in my mind a lot. I'm an intelligent guy, but I struggled in school. The message I always got from teachers was, doesn't meet his potential, easily distracted, that sort of thing. So I kind of always felt like I was getting in trouble or something.
Yeah.
If anybody relates, and I'm sure they can, I was like just not doing enough to, I guess, meet my potential. So that was my experience leading up to, the first time I picked up, and of course started with alcohol.
So like fear, doubts, insecurities, feeling not good enough.
100%.
Okay. All right.
100%.
And so you were 14 years old?
Yeah, 14 years old, and started with alcohol, although very sporadically, very intermittent, and only like a couple times, and then immediately, I just liked the feeling. It was good, and that kind of progressed to throughout high school regular use. And I kind of always in high school had this feeling I was a little bit different from my friends because some of them could go the weekend without having a drink or something else. And for me, it was just really important. If we didn't get access to alcohol, I was, it just wasn't a good enough weekend for me. So I always had this sense. And it's funny too, because my family had some alcoholism in it. I would hear about Alcoholics Anonymous, hear that my uncle was sober, that he couldn't have a drink because when he starts, he can't stop. And that made perfect sense to me. And across the street from where I grew up at the Union Hall, they hosted an AA meeting. So I always associated AA with good people that were trying to get better and help themselves, people that were chasing recovery and that their lives had improved. And it was not surprising to me when I turned, when I was in my early 30s that I ended up in treatment. Here I am, I'd progressed all the way. I became an IV drug user, heroin, methamphetamine, really anything water soluble, alcoholic for many years and everything in between, really. But it wasn't a surprise to me once I ended up in treatment. I remember having a conversation with my dad at 16. I got suspended from school for drinking. And on the way home, he said, you really got to be careful because there's a lot of O'Shaunessy's who have alcoholism. And I was pretty sure at that time that pretty sure I could relate to that. And again, I kind of always pictured myself as at some point having to get sober because I couldn't control it.
So it's very interesting because when I think back to being 14 years old, I idolized the people that were like star athletes and like, oh, their life, because like I grew up in like a very unstable, unsafe, environment. And I didn't have those things. I did actually discover in high school that I was very athletic, but up until then I didn't really have that. And so it's just so crazy because like what meets the eye is not really what's going on internally. You know what I mean? It sounds like you had all these great things going for you, but as a 14-year-old person, you felt exactly the same way I did, although we had very different lifestyles.
100%. Yeah.
And so at 16 years old, like you had an idea that like you might be heading for like this long road of alcoholism. At 16 years old, like what did alcoholism mean to you?
I guess all I knew, because my family and my dad would talk about it, just people that he knew and some family members, was like, once you start, you can't stop. And he knew a lot of people that died young men, not so much women I don't remember hearing about, but younger guys that he was in high school with, or maybe that were like in the army or something, that they died of alcoholism one way or another, whether it was a car crash. I just heard about lots of people having consequences. That's what I took away from it. And so alcoholism, what did it mean to me? I guess, like I said, I kind of just felt a little bit different from most of my peers because having a drink was a top priority almost at all times. Once I was like second freshman year, I did freshman year twice.
Hell
so I was
yeah.
15, 16 years old, and we were all playing sports and competitive and having fun and chasing girls. But I had to have a drink. It was a real top priority for me, whereas my buddies weren't. And I'd always end up, they would be driving me around. And I was never out of control drunk at that age, but I just remember they were the ones not drinking. It wasn't as important to them. So I always had a ride. And I could tell then, I was like, why don't they care? But I do so much. That was my thinking back then.
I asked that because I hope that this conversation has come up for a reason that is greater than us and for someone else. And I ask that for any 16-year-old or any teenager that may be watching this, that's like considering like, maybe I do have a problem, and if someone is watching and is in that boat, what is like the best advice to like literally take yourself back to being like a 16-year-old child? If you could have like done one thing different, like what would you do, or what would you suggest to them to do?
Well, it's a great question. I think the stigma back then was so much different.
Yeah, that's true.
There were so many consequences to even people finding out about using or drinking. It was scary, but I guess today things have changed so much. There's so much access to treatment. I would say at that early age, unless you've progressed so much that it's interfering with your life in so many ways, if you suspect there's something going on, you're a little different from your fellows, as they say in AA, talk to an individual therapist or a guidance counselor. And
so it must be really hard. I mean, when I was 16 years old, I was constantly pulled into the guidance counselor's office and like told, you have so much potential, what are you doing? But like, I couldn't see it because it was the culture that I lived in. What I was doing was perfectly normal, and everyone else had a problem. Like, and their problem was they were focused on me.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and I had no awareness that like there was a different way of life, and I had no desire to live a different way of life at 16 years old. Like, my mindset was like I'm here for a good time, not a long time.
Yep, I can relate to that too.
Yeah. Okay. So 16 to 30, there's a lot of time in between. Let's talk about it.
Well, let's see. Yeah. I mean, I ended up playing competitive sports in high school, and I got involved in theater and music. All those things are really important.
Can you
to
sing?
me. I could sing a little bit.
Go.
No, I'm not singing here.
Go.
No, absolutely not.
I swear to God, we're going to cancel the show if you don't.
I'm not singing, but I play guitar. And so like I was kind of this involved in a little bit of everything. I ended up going to college, playing baseball, and I was the captain of my team. But still in college, I was very much considered myself like this free spirit kind of guy. I'm here for a good time, not a long time necessarily. And I was well liked. The guys liked me, but I think they also knew I was like, I like to have fun, and probably more regularly than most of them. And on nights before games, it was just important to me, more important than it was for other people around me, is what I noticed. After college, things progressed. Just daily drinking and waking up with a hangover for probably 6 or 7 years. That progressed.
Okay, so hold on.
Yeah.
You went to college for?
I majored in history.
And what did you do after college?
I worked in admissions at an independent secondary school, a boarding school in Connecticut.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I had all this. And so you continued to drink, but your life hadn't started to spiral yet.
Well, it was because I'd gotten married to a woman I met in college, and that marriage lasted less than 2 years, and it was a direct result. I mean, among other things, but really directly because of my drinking and drug use, because I was abusing all sorts of prescription medications that she would find.
Were you prescribed them?
Some
Okay.
manipulating and finding creative ways to get prescribed.
Yep.
Certainly abusing them, and they were supposed to last a month, and I was finding they're lasting maybe 10 days or half a month, and then you have to go find other creative ways to get them for the rest of the month. So abusing prescription meds and then drinking heavily, mostly just beer, until
It's amazing that you made it for such a long span. It's a
Yeah.
long time of like attempting to manage your life with an unmanageable internal condition.
Oh, and I had no idea how to adult, and anybody in recovery knows what I mean.
How
by
do
that.
you do that?
Yeah, I where I worked, I lived. They provided the housing, they paid for the cable and the phone, the heating, the
They
hot
let your
water.
wife live there with you?
She lived there with me for 2 years.
Wow.
And so all the housing was taken care of. Really, I had a vehicle that I'd paid for in full. I had no expenses, so I never was really thrust into like a real world situation. The gym was for free. There was a dining hall, so I ate for free. I never really was forced to like learn how to manage my own life. But then when I left that job, I lasted 28 days at the next job. And this was when I went and found an apartment. And then I lasted 28 days at the job. I think like 14 or 16 days. And then including the weekends, it was 28 days. So not very long. And they pulled me into the office and they said, look, we thought it was going to work out. I was 30 years old. And they said, the train has left the station and you're not on it. And then I had to move back in with my parents. And at that point, when I got home with them and I'm 30 years old, and I said, I'd never really been exposed to 12-step recovery, and, admitting that our lives had become unmanageable. I'd never heard that phrase, but I just remember saying to my mother, I cannot manage my own life. I had no idea how to pay a bill I was the least reliable person I knew. I couldn't make an appointment on time. I was not a man of my word, certainly. I think I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Just a lot of lying. And I always thought to myself, if people really knew what was going on and people really knew who I was, they wouldn't like me so much. So that was, 30, and then it progressed quickly from there. By the time I was 32, I was using cocaine daily. And then and there was a period of time where I was, a crack cocaine user daily. That didn't last long. It never does.
Yeah.
It's a
Usually
horrible,
doesn't.
yeah. And I
My
went to
experience
treatment.
anyways.
I'd never used intravenously before. After treatment, it progressed. And that's what we say. It's a progressive illness. It always gets worse, never gets better. And it did. It did for me. I became a daily heroin user and methamphetamine from time to time. Still drinking regularly, and again, anything else water soluble or that would make me feel different. I was open to taking it up until I was 32, and then I went to treatment in New Hampshire. I came back home, went to treatment, and finally found long-term recovery, good long-term recovery. And one of the things was my sponsor picked me up from the place I was going to treatment at. Once you got to 30 days, you could have a sponsor. They'd come pick you up. You'd take me to a meeting, and he'd say, guys like you don't make it that long. You don't have a long shelf life. You're playing with a loaded gun. And he said, in order to do this, you got to be all in all the time. You got to chase recovery. And so that really landed with me. That resonated. It was like, all right, all in all the time. And that's exactly what it took.
It's crazy because people that are far advanced in their substance use disorder don't make it long.
No.
I think that I've had more deaths this year than I've had in all of my time in recovery.
Yep. And I was looking and hearing about the numbers. Something like 120,000 people died of overdoses in the last year. A lot of them are being poisoned, I think. They don't even know that fentanyl's in whatever substance they're using. I mean, that's the whole city of Manchester gone. And I know COVID is, we're dealing with COVID, but this is like a real epidemic that deserves a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Is taking lives from people.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
And that's why we have our voice. And like, we need to carry that outside of here. And we need to get on every platform that we can get on. We need to get in front of every group of people that we can get in front of. And, you know, and like whatever we can do to help one person, because if you can help one person, they're going to help one person who helps one person who helps one person. That's going to help 6 people. That's going to help 7. And before you know, you can help communities get well.
Yep.
You know? So sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's
Yeah.
good. I mean,
I just really want to empower you to get out there and use your voice.
I know, and I don't
Yeah.
enough. I think I could be probably a little bit more active in the recovery community, but
even one thing that like I'm incredibly interested is like education for the youth, because like my substance use disorder, I was a drug addict before high school.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to say that had I been educated or offered resources that anything would have been any different for me, because I didn't desire anything else. You know, but imagine if we could get in there and start impacting the youth to give them better lives, you know, and for someone such as, have you ever, I feel like you've had to have heard of this, the rat park theory.
The rat park theory?
Yeah. So like
No.
dislocation theory is actually what it's called. So Bruce Alexander. So this is like GRC used to, Granite Recovery Centers, introduced me to this. And so way back in the day, they would put rats in the cage with the cocaine water, and the rats would keep
I've heard
drinking
this,
the water
yep.
until they die, right? And then Bruce Alexander came along, and he's like, of course, because they're miserable. And so he created a rat park with like all these male and female rats, so they could have all the sex they wanted, all the toys they wanted, and just like all these rat treats. And he created a life that was desirable for them. And then he gave them regular water, and he gave them drug water. And they chose the regular water.
Yeah.
You know, and so if we could get in with the youth and help them create the life that it is desired and help them be fulfilled, spiritual, beautiful beings that they are, you know, they could carry that into the latter part of life and keep carrying that on and on and on.
Oh man, that I can tell you that life in recovery or without substances, 1,000 times more rewarding, more
Yeah.
fun, more desirable than one.
Well, let's
Where
talk
you're
about it. Let's talk
addicted.
about your life today.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's get
Perfect
to the good
segue.
stuff.
Let's get there.
Because there's so much hope in recovery.
Yeah.
And so my life has really gone from homeless, although I never actually slept on a street, but I never had a home of my own. And there were times when I had to move back in with my parents. I mean, I was the definition of actually kind of being homeless. I didn't really have an address. I was everywhere but nowhere. And you know, jobless, you lost a car, lost a relationship, you know, lost really everything, my dignity. But then on the other hand, find recovery. I've been able to help thousands of people, I think, find recovery themselves. And still, as I move around the community, because I do a lot of outreach work today, I just meet people that I had maybe when I was in treatment or that I knew from meetings. So many people, and because I worked in treatment, I was able to help other people. But the point is, I would not be able to work in this field or have the career that I have without finding long-term recovery. And then since then, I've gotten into a beautiful new relationship. I never thought of myself as being someone who would have kids. I don't have children of my own, but I kind of always considered myself, up until I found recovery, as like this really selfish person. And how could I possibly have kids? They're kind of going to like interfere with what I want to do.
Yeah.
It just was never in the
Absolutely.
picture. And so now,
Preach.
yeah, I found this beautiful woman and a
Oh.
great relationship. And Tia has 2 young children, and I've been in their lives for 6 years. They're 12 and 8.
Wow.
So I've known them more than half their lives.
Yeah.
We've lived together now for 4 years. We bought a new, beautiful home. I mean, a home that I didn't know how people, it never made sense to me. Like, how does somebody own a house? How do they pay their bills? What's a mortgage? Never occurred to me that I could actually do it. I knew in theory I could, because I saw other people, my peers, like who I went to high school and college with, were doing it. I didn't think I could do it. So now I'm doing all of that stuff. It's not always easy, but it's much easier than if I woke up with a hangover. And I heard a guy say in AA, he's like, I never woke up the next morning saying to myself, you know, I wish I had a drink last night or a drug last night. And that's kind of the way I feel. It's like life is good. I mean, some days life isn't perfect, but for the most part, yeah, it's a much more desirable way of life. And we have fun. We do recover. You know, we're
Yeah.
not a glum lot, as they say in the big book. We are not a glum lot. I remember when I was 4 months sober, I went on a camping trip, a sober camping trip with some other friends in recovery. And they were like, come along with me. Let's show you the way. Let's show you how we do. And then we went kayaking and did some other stuff. And I was thinking, this is the first time I've had fun sober. I'd never experienced that. And that was so important. So if you're out there, you're early in recovery, you're getting into recovery, you're seeking recovery, stick around. It gets better. And come along with us. We'll show you the way. And go have fun doing it. There's a lot, you can have fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun with my friends, going to the gym, going bowling. I've gone to conventions like all over the country. Me and my best friend, we like to like cosplay where we like dress up as like creatures and stuff. Sounds crazy, but it's so fun. And we literally went to a convention in Boston like dressed as elves and walked around the entire convention in full like we had contacts, like you could not tell, like ears put on, you couldn't tell it was us. And literally the whole entire weekend attended this convention with like thousands of people as fucking elves. I just swore. Yeah, right? And it was fun and it's wild and I love doing things like that.
I heard someone say that's pretty awesome. I heard someone say, you know, drugs and alcohol, they'll get you dressed up for the party, but you'll never actually get there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if you've experienced that, but yeah, they're great intentions, but you can never make it for anything. And certainly I don't think you'd be going to any event like you just talked about if you're drinking and drugging. I mean, there's just probably would want to.
It took me a little while to be able to be me in my own skin in recovery. But most people that know you will literally tell you, oh, that's Jasmine. Like, she's crazy. She's fun. She's wild. She's bold. Like, I get to be me sober. You know, like I am unapologetically myself, like it or don't. I am me. And I am for some people and I am for the people that God has intended for me to help. And anyone else, you know, there's someone out there for you and I love you. No hard feelings.
Yeah.
Show's over.
Awesome. That was fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hold on. This is your camera.
Okay.
What is one thing that you would like to say to anyone watching or anyone that needs help or that wants help or their loved one wants help?
I mean, come along with us. Let us show you the way. Reach out, ask for help. There's a lot of hope in recovery. And there's so many of us now, and it's cool to be sober. So sober is the new black. What do you say? Orange is the new black? Yeah, sober is the new cool. I'm serious. Like, there's a lot of good people in recovery. It's cool to get sober.
It is.
Come along with us. We'll show you the way.
We're pretty rad.
Yeah.
Come hang out with us. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone at home watching. As always, we appreciate your time. Tony had a lot of wonderful things to say. If you're interested in connecting with Tony, interested in connecting with any resources, please reach out to us. You can find us on our Facebook page. I'm a heroin addict. Go ahead and send us a message, and we'll get you connected with him. Thank you.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.